of summer's golden hue, faded days long dead and gone. Tears run cold and longer, familiar ghosts that always haunt her. All the right way she went wrong. So you found the bright lights, baby. So you found the bright lights, baby. In a place.
Hello, this is John Jughead reading my book Weasels in a Box. We're in book 2, deep in book 2, almost near the end, chapter 11. This is my friend Jim James. Jim James. Jim. So if you want to, I mean, if you can interrupt me if you want during something, or I'll take a pause and I might say something.
I'm sure I will have pointless questions.
Yeah. So let's see. So chapter 11. Chapter 11 begin. Mr. Famous was beginning his quick slide into touring as the greatest evil conceived for a functioning band. There was no one incident. It was a cumulative effect. Evils stacked on top of evils. It was not playing out in itself that began to repel this man, but the audience reactions, the violent tendencies and onslaught of stupidity in masses. I was trying to excuse him. I really think there's a lot more than that. Anyway. No longer was the band...
I'm guessing I have a good idea who this is, correct? Mr.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Mr. Famous is Ben.
Okay, that's...
Yeah. No longer was the band shocking audiences by playing nude in South Carolina in front of a bunch of rednecks receiving punches in the face like Soul Food. Soul Food was Ozfish, is Warren. When he blew a kiss to the skinhead in the second row. No, the band was getting bottles thrown at their heads like in Florida, just for stepping foot on stage, just for being a band known to hate. No longer did Mr. Famous, you, and the rest of the band have to attempt to shock an audience into thinking for a few moments about their place in society, about what they were doing with their lives, and saying what they feel, and not what they think they should say, about just having fun on your own conditions. Much of it flew into a void of teenage angst, apathy, selfish melodramatic destruction of property, and eventual commercialism, fashion, and popularity. That seems to happen like every decade to like music scenes in general. Well, then I say pause. This is a quote then. That is not a way to review this next section of your life. You're not going to learn anything about yourself while blowing that bullshit up your own ass. Oh, see, I was calling myself out on it already. We both know this to be true. It is hard to distinguish the reliability of the aforementioned reasons from some of the fears, anxieties, self-interest, jealousies, loss of inspiration, paranoia about creative control, and the fucked upness of many of the band decisions based on what was believed to be fueled by pure integrity. And I say, fine, let's get out of here. And that was the end of chapter 11, and I have chapter 11, take 2, where we start out.
I do have a question
about
kind of having known you for quite some time through playing music together, and you regaling me with the kind of behind the scenes of the fictitious semi-famous band the book is about. Was it a concentrated effort to be this hated band? Was that something that you guys set out to do?
No, I mean, you know me enough to know that I can't really...
I mean,
I'm not really about being hated.
Yeah, that's not really your
It's not my thing.
But I'm just saying it kind of seemed to progress like that naturally, which is odd given how good the music was.
Well, I think it was... part of it was Ben just dealing with his anxiety, because whenever he got on the stage, he was so freaked out that his best way of dealing with it was to just lashing out. Also, his big influences back then were like Black Flag and a lot of sort of in-your-face, that sort of hardcore, big, So I was hoping that he means what he says, and where he didn't care what people thought. He just wanted to do what we wanted to do. But in many ways, ever since he was a kid, he was always responding to authority in an abrasive, aggressive way. So I think it was just kind of made sense that was part of the band then too.
It kind of became.
I mean, that's what he was.
Not a shtick of the band, but like I remember even when I was a kid going to see you guys, it almost seemed like 80% of the show was watching you guys play amazing pop punk music, but then 20% was seeing what was going to happen or who was going to say what or what altercation was going to transpire.
Yeah, it was interesting. I liked it. Sometimes we didn't get through the set because of stuff like that. But later, like in the period that people by the time that Panic got into the band, my brain hurts. It wasn't like that anymore. That it was pretty, for the most part, pretty. We would just do the set. It was the earlier days, like Bogota and the Punk House and stuff, where half our set was just him yelling at the audience.
Was the shit talking and mayhem.
Yeah, it was.
Probably would have been great to see, though.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I mean, the scene was really exciting and dangerous then.
It's probably not as homogenized.
Yeah, the skinheads were pretty active at that point, and they were pretty aggressive. So, I mean, there was always that on the top of every situation. And then again, punk wasn't in style then, so you also played all the dingy clubs,
it's not like in Vogue where now you can play the House of Blues. And
you always played the worst areas, so you were already worried about your equipment being stolen and getting beat up even before the show started.
Well, I'm glad I missed that era. I mean, It seems fun, but
yeah. Well, now we're getting into the real chapter. This is longer, so here we go. And you can stop me anytime you want to respond to this. So, shoulder to shoulder, so this is chapter 2, take 2. Chapter 11, take 2. Yeah, book 2. Shoulder to shoulder, you and the bass player from the Boys from Wyoming, that's Corey, walk together like antique twin punk boy bookends with their wooden hands buried in their front sculpted pockets. You both veer slightly left and right, bumping into each other and laughing, dodging the sprinkling rain and the overflow of water from storefront canopies. This is actually one of my favorite. This is when I started writing the book, was based on this experience I had with Corey when we were in, where were we in, not Nashville, the other, what's the other place in Tennessee? Memphis. Yeah, it was a crazy night.
Geography, not a
Yeah. There is an aura that emanates from this companionship. It reverberates from sidewalk to sidewalk. Anyone, a mother, a grandmother, a child in a baby carriage, a thief on the road could look at the two of you and instantly be in the know. They would say to themselves or to complete strangers passing by, "Those two boys are friends. Bandmates. They have an objective. Look at the way they walk. They're doing something with their lives. Look how they strut with purpose."
Huh. How did you meet the guys from the Lillingtons? Like how did that?
Well, they recorded with Mass. They came out from Wyoming to record with Mass Giorgini and Lafayette, and then anything good that came through Sonic Iguana would immediately be sent to Ben, and we were running Panic Button Records, so he liked it, and then he sent it to me to see if we would put it out, and we did. And then when they came to town, they
crashed here. Right?
Yeah, they stayed. Yeah, right here in this house, actually. Yeah, they would always stay here. You know that nothing is special is happening. The two of you are nothing special. You hardly even know each other, really. Maybe you have known him for about 2 years. That is nothing compared to the almost 25 years you have known Franklin Famous. Whether we are talking about new companions or old associates, either way, there are feelings you get occasionally that give the impression that the world has been created specifically for you and the people around you. Do you get that feeling? Do you ever get that feeling that the world was created for you?
No, I don't even think my ego is that big.
I don't know if that's ego as much.
Ego?
Yeah, it might be a little bit ego. Yeah, that could be a little bit ego. I think you're right. Nothing special has to happen. You don't have to gain overwhelming respect from the masses, or find $1 million in a gutter, or get away with robbery or murder with only a smile for a weapon. You just have to walk down the street, and the feeling arrives upon its own accord. It really is nothing special. It goes away as quickly as it comes, but it always leaves an imprint. The strips where the feeling and the thoughts that follow occur are marked with scent and visuals, with a song in the background, with a memory partially faded. You look to the left. There's a group of musicians visible through the window of the Middle Eastern Cafe. Through the whole book, I don't know if you realize this from watching some of these, but it always revolves around coming back to the Boston area. Every, book 1 and book 2 and book 3 are actually the same walk. Just different things happen each time. But it's kind of based on the book Ulysses, which was
So it's like
James Joyce,
So it's like
which is
your own sort of hero's journey.
Yeah, it's my own hero's journey. Yes. Yeah, very good. But 3 of them. Yeah. And it happens differently each time. So that's about the memory and how memory changes and actually how you experience something.
Which is what I get a kick out of it, because there are parts in the book that are almost retellings of the same events, but through maybe slightly skewed angles. Maybe how your memories of it has changed through the years, which I think is it's very cool and meta for you.
Yeah, that's why I was playing with the first person and second person stuff too, so that I could try to see it from different perspectives. So there is a group of musicians visible through the window of the Middle Eastern cafe. It is a band setting up its gear. I wondered whether I had done this clear enough earlier. This is the second time around, but someone who was watching these videos thought the band in the window was the Lillingtons, but the Lillingtons are with me, like on this sort of trip getting ready to play. The band in the window is just some jazz band that was playing at the Middle Eastern cafe. But just FYI. So you FYI. That might have been me not writing clear enough, or maybe how I read it. They have not been conjured to play the soundtrack for the day in the life of J.J. Bedbug. Well, my name also changes a bunch of times in the book, too, on purpose.
My favorite is Bunk Bed. That is my absolute favorite.
Yeah, I got that name from Chris Barrows, actually. He named me. He would write me... Some of these were from him, because he would write me letters way back when
and he would change
my name.
Name every time.
Yeah. Although the thought does cross your mind as you look over at them, their instruments are not yet ready to make sound, but a sort of accidental music can be heard. Oh, that's interesting. This is the music of chance that becomes part of the music of chance. I was reading a lot of... I just forgot his name right now. Oh, he's one of my favorite novelists. I can't remember his name right now. Paul Auster. That's one of his books. It's called Music of Chance. Anyway, have you ever read a Paul Auster book? Mm-hmm. Oh, he's very good. The soundtrack will carry on into a strange encounter only a moment away from now. The band is whistling, arguing, and shuffling about, and even though it is behind the glass, the actions are louder than the sounds of the street. The outside is making no sound at all. The streets are silent. Even with the clodhopper footing of the bass player from the Boys from Wyoming, every little sound of the band can be heard. The drummer unzipping his stick bag, the guitarist tuning his strings, the bassist pushing his foot down upon an uneven floorboarding that begins to creak. You see a thin girl in denim pants pass by the outside windows. She looks vaguely familiar. She glances over in your direction and then speaks with a silent whisper toward her friend's ear. They shift their faces toward you, turn back, and then continue walking. See, in the first book, that couple actually stop and talk to me. And I make a reference to her being cute. So this time, they just walk by me, I think. So that's the difference between the two books. The journey leisurely toward the venue, parallel to you and the bass player from the Boys from Wyoming. The metallic sound of the drummer's drum key twisting and tightening is in time with the steps of the girl in denim. Her long hair creaks each time she pushes it away from her face. Her friends converse, shoes hit the pavement and reverberate like the tuning of a string. Each step down the street sounds higher than the one before it. The steps come close to you, but never reach. A perfect E. Oh, that's interesting. I did a metaphor for the whole thing of people being music. Car loudly zooms down the street. As it passes by, the roar of the engine restores the noise of the external city, as if the fender of the car is scraping a hole into the side of a soundproof invisible force field. The traffic, pedestrians, and the ravaging sky itself seem much louder now that they have all been reincorporated. The bass player from the Boys from Wyoming turns to you and says, "Hey, Bedbug, that guy looks remarkably like you." You stop and allow the girl and the boy to move past. "No, he doesn't." "Yes, he does." "No, he doesn't." "No reason to get offended. I just had this funny, strange thought that I thought you could appreciate."
Okay, I remember this is a callback from your
Yeah.
You look like you.
"And what would that be?" "It was like I just saw you walking on the opposite side of the street like a mirror image. Then this freaky thing happened where I had to think for a moment about who I was, because I thought for a moment that I could have been over there." He points to the other side of the street. "I could have been that girl over there walking with you, like I'm not here. I don't mean that I could be a chick. I'm just saying I wondered if I was even here. Never mind. It doesn't make any sense. But I don't look like him. That's the only thing he gets all philosophical, and all I can think about is I don't look like him. Yes, you do. Oh, forget it. That's pretty funny. I forgot that I wrote that. I don't know why it was important to me not to... you have this image of what you think you look like, and then whenever someone points out, like, oh, this person is like you, I always find the qualities I don't like about that person.
Yeah, even they can look almost identical to you, but you will point out their flaws upon why you don't think they look like.
Yeah, that's exactly what that was sort of playing up, that idea. You stop, turn to face them, and stare at their figures as their arms, legs, and torsos move slowly out of perspective, growing smaller into a distance that increases in size with each step. Who are these people? The bass player from the Boys from Wyoming continues walking forward, and you turn to face the street. After a few steps, he realizes he is walking by himself. He turns to face you. Another car passes, and for a moment all sound begins to blur together as if it is being churned. There's a lot of references to sound in this chapter, isn't it? Then it is all whisked away into a soundless, crystal-clear tornado that bounces down the street behind the car in silence. The tornado travels around the block, bouncing up over the 2-story buildings, then reappears again down the street by the hulking metal door of the Goth Club. The tornado then bounces back up as if it has spotted you. It stops in front of your face and spins in place. Sound made solid like wind blows your hair back. Without eyes to be seen, the tornado stares at you. Then it slaps you with a hand made of concentrated sound waves. You blink your eyes, and it is gone. The sky is darker now, as if the rain clouds had swallowed all the sun's rays. I liked my little surreal moments in these books.
That's why, and to go back again, I like the metaphor of comparing people to to music, because some people are very major and some people are very almost like dissonant. They've got a weird turmoil or minor. Like, I think that was a very clever thing. That was cool.
Thank you. Yeah, because the whole thing is at the beginning. The part of the subtitle is a not so musical journey through partially truthful situations with 80% fictitious dialogue. So I was playing with this idea that it's kind of ironic saying it's not a musical journey, because I don't really feel like it was like one of the. I didn't want it to be one of those tour journals that a lot of
like
bands,
an autobiography.
I wanted it to be a novel, yeah. But I think it's kind of ironic that I say it isn't a musical journey, because I actually refer to a lot of stuff in musical like terms and rhythm. So that's a little joke I was playing with with myself. Are you pissing? Just couldn't wait, huh? I think we're almost there. Are you pissing? What is that supposed to mean? You twist your neck to see the bass player from the Boys from Wyoming standing a few steps behind you. What? Nothing. Let's go. You turn to look back at the street, but it is no longer there. It has been replaced by a crumbling wall of red brick. You look up and see the ledge of a building about 3 stories in height. The sky above is dark and clear, filled with stars millions of miles thick. There are no clouds at all, just a whole bunch of night. You reach forward and poke a brick with your finger. It is solid, tangible. The building you are facing, with your toes pressed up against its crumbling bricks, appears to be an abandoned warehouse or factory. Slightly to the left, a wooden-framed window grants permission to look through its center into a dark, starlit room. There are so many holes in the ceiling that you can look up through 2 stories of decaying floors and up through the roof into the sky. The concrete floor is covered with fragments of sparkling glass, dull metal, and textured scraps of fabric. I don't even know where I am. I don't remember this. This is exciting. There's a piece of machinery, possibly the remnants of a large drill, lying on its side up against the other end of the room. You tilt your head to the right and glance around the corner of the brick wall. The quick motion makes you dizzy. You close your eyes, take in a few breaths, and then reopen them. You're trying to prevent yourself from throwing up. There is an acidic, alcoholic liquid splashing up from your stomach into the back of your throat. You say to yourself, "My God, I'm drunk." Calm down. In the distance, you can make out a signpost. The sign says Beale Street. Crowds of people stumble by on their way up and down the beer-soaked, bottle-littered roadway. Some are heading through this one-block no-man's zone back to the city-gridded section of 16-story hotels. Have you ever been to Beale Street?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a cool place.
I'm just surprised at the fact that, I mean, having known each other and having toured and drank with one another, I don't think I've ever seen you vomitous intoxicated before.
Yeah. Why? I barely ever do. I think that's why these two memories are triggered together, because I got wasted with Corey that night. Yeah, I usually do. I got wasted with Corey, and then, but I had either before that or after that got wasted with my longtime girlfriend Shannon in the same place. So I think this mixes the two memories. Like, we got so wasted. Those are only 2 times in my life I think I got really wasted.
Never seen.
Yeah, we're both on Beale Street, drinking those really sugary, horrible drinks in those big bottles.
That'll do it. Beale Street will do it to the best of us.
Okay, the sound of trumpets, harmonicas, electric guitars, side street microphones, and battery-operated box amps, drums and bass, guitars, acoustic and electric, collide in the air above Beale Street. It sends out a chaotic hum for blocks in all directions. You look down at the zipper on your pants. It is not unzipped. You are not pissing. You are just standing there facing a wall. You step away from the bricks, catch your heel on an empty bottle of Bud, and stumble toward the bass player from the Boys from Wyoming. He does not notice this exquisite leap and bound. He is staring into a sky of silhouetted roofs opposite Beale Street. The two of you are poised at a crossroads in Memphis, Tennessee, 3 days into the Texas future and 4 days into the Boston past. Stuck in a decrepit Midland with live entertainment behind you and a city sleeping up ahead. Jack, can you recognize the top of our hotel? The two of you are lost. Earlier in the evening, you and the bass player from the Boys from Wyoming sat at a piano bar on Beale Street, watching dueling pianists collage Elton John and Billy Joel. You got completely plastered for the first time in many years. Oh, there, I see him in a minute. The two of you were stinking drunk. In between rounds, you tell him a story about the first Memphis vacation you took about 6 years ago with a girl you had met a week prior. You and this new girlfriend, Charla, who's actually a Shannon, yeah. I ended up dating her for 5 years, but we had gone to Beale Street, like, after a week. She was like, let's go to Memphis. And I was like, all right. So we hopped the bus.
Seems like a good idea at the time.
So the girlfriend Charla got similarly plastered together for the first time while walking into and imbibing at each and every bar along Beale Street, including the one you are sitting at while telling him this story. Your first time in Memphis was right at the beginning of a 3-year drinking binge. I was drinking for a while then. That's right, yeah. It's funny because I didn't drink until I was around.
I can't imagine you.
Well, I didn't start drinking until almost the band, like even a blackout. So this is like right slightly before that, I think. It was devastating for a young man like you who had hardly drank at all. It was part of the relationship with Charla. Your casual lifestyle had made this choice to drink easy. You were far from becoming an alcoholic. You have been surrounded by alcoholics since before you can remember. And your drinking during this time period was short-lived and not nearly as consistent as actors and musicians and fathers you knew. It was just nice to be numb for a while and not have to worry about getting up for work the next morning, or the next morning, or the next morning after that, and so on and so forth. I just saw that you put your beer down while I was reading that.
Yes. I felt bad because I remember when I was
drink my vodka.
When I was a younger man on the first couple Blackouts tours, and maybe was having a bit too much fun, you'd be like, Jim, you need to keep your shit together a little bit. Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, I would do that. The Weasel was very, we were always very, the good thing about even in Blackouts was, I made sure we were all not drinking beforehand. One drink, I think, was what we had talked about. But afterwards, everyone can get plastered all they wanted.
Yeah, I think that was our thing.
That was the rule, that you couldn't drink before the show. Where am I?
Sorry.
That's fine. No, that's the idea, that you're supposed to be. Your casual lifestyle, okay. You were far from being, okay, life and not nearly as consistent. It was just nice to be numb for a while and not have to worry about getting up for, okay, I read that. Okay, here we go. You were a reluctant musician who was given too much time to not play his instrument. I still feel that way.
Do you feel like a reluctant kind of punk rock icon? Which you are, granted.
Yeah, I don't think it's ever been reluctant. I actually like being punk icon, you say, or legend, as some people say. I really enjoy it. I've never felt like I was a very good guitarist. I think it was more, I don't know. It wasn't just, like Ben always says, right time, right place, right time. But I don't even think he even thinks that. We did so much work to get our name out there.
Yeah.
It wasn't like some accident. We put in 5 or 6 years before we even had any kind of audience.
But would you?
But I think it's more about keeping. I do believe in this idea of keeping a little bit of humility in your life in general, like that. I'm not like as deprecating as like a Ben, like it hasn't like in a lot of his songs. Like every night, I think about how deprecating a lot of the songs are, almost too much. But I do allow a little bit of humility or analyzing it or trying to make it not seem like it's as big as it is.
Do you think that is in part due to you being so prolific in writing that affects kind of the way you approach music? Is that you kind of are more grounded as a writer compared to being John Jughead Pearson? Yeah,
maybe. I mean, another thing too, me and my friend Peter used to always talk about that. He used to always try to say, "You're a writer, John," and I was more like, I don't, I could be a playwright. It could be. It just, to me, it was more about time moving and just trying to stay busy. And the idea of putting a label on myself almost, to me, would restrict me from doing what I wanted to do.
So you kind of see it as tomorrow you're Jughead, but Sunday you're John the writer or the actor. Is that kind of how you approach life?
Yeah.
Which is cool.
Yeah. I think in some ways it's hurt because it made me not commit to one thing so much. Like, I don't have any regrets, but I think if I had not been the type of person, I could have probably pushed one or the other things farther than I have. But it's more important to me to be genuine to what I feel I am that day or that.
Which is what we talk about. What I admire about you is that you do you. You don't do just kind of fake bullshit for the sake of doing it.
Yeah, I don't think I even possibly could. I write about that a lot. Is like I see people that do fake things, and
for the sake of just doing it, or to continue milking it.
Yeah, and I can only let myself get away with a little bit of that before I'm just over it. Yeah, but that doesn't translate to like playing the same. Like I will always play Weasel songs over and over again. I never get tired of them. To me, that's not.
Those are your babies.
Yeah, I like playing them. It's not like I'm one of those guys that like, I'm just playing it for the fans. I actually really enjoy.
Yeah. So I can't play Ace of Prairie ever again.
And I enjoy that energy that they get from it. So, to me, that's not fake. But I know how it could be perceived as fake because I played those songs for so many years. And someone like Ben or Vapid do get really tired of playing the same songs. Whereas I think I'm more of a performer than those guys are. Like I was a born actor. Like. And it's in us, not because actors have to do the same play over and over.
Yeah,
and
I think it shows
make it interesting
in your stage performance when you're. I remember being stage right to you, and you would be like doing the splits halfway center stage, halfway stage left, and I think it really shows in your showmanship on stage that you do have that kind of theater actor background.
Yeah, there's just I was talking to Liz about this the other day. I think that you got to find that something in every performance that makes it different, like,
and still have fun with it too.
Yeah. Oh, that's why I was talking because when Frank did his acoustic show here, he was so good. He's like
Dr. Frank.
No, Dr. Frank. Yeah, he's really good because he tells really good stories and they lead into the songs he's doing. But I saw him a couple nights in a row. And it's like, it's the same thing with maybe adding. It's like a stand-up comedian. You do that same routine and then you see what works and you build on it.
Kind of play off.
But it's basically the same thing every night with little bits of changes. But I can't even allow myself to do that. Like I have to like throw myself to the edge of let's just throw all that other stuff out from yesterday and start over.
Oh yeah, I remember being on tour with you and your stage banter will literally change.
Yeah, I don't allow myself to repeat the same stuff, which makes it more difficult. But once again, like if I could take the route like Frank and probably do better at that one thing, but it's not in me to do that. I can't do that. Anyway, let's get through this. No, that's fine. There's both of us. The band stopped touring, and a few months later, the band split up. The most major of the breakups. It wasn't the end of the world, but this lack of what had previously become the norm would cause need for major personal reconstruction.
Which
I don't know which breakup this is.
Yeah, which group?
This I'm talking about Weasel here, but
no,
I don't know.
Which members of this era?
Well, when me and Shannon were together, that had to be the
Is that the classic?
Bark Like a Dog. It was like so. I'm talking about the
That's mine.
after losing Vapid to How to Make Enemies. I think we're talking around that period, and then either that one or the one right after Bark Like a Dog where we stopped playing again. Those breakups I think were close, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Yeah. Because we reformed with Vapid and Panic,
like I'm
and
a
then
fan or anything.
yeah, but then we stopped again after that. Never did a tour or anything. Something's going on out there. It is hard to maintain firm grounding when the whims of semi-famous could always awake from a deep sleep and sweep you away into new directions. Well, someone's in trouble. A breakup can instantly turn into a temporary hiatus. There's no foreseeable way of saying no if the active band decides to creep back into existence. It's part of you. You couldn't bear to see it exist without you. Oh, see? Wow, there. See, this is before. See, this is why I read this stuff, because that's where it's going. That's what's happening now, folks. And it's just quite possible that it couldn't survive without you. Well, that was the only words that I wrote about the breakup was about that, about how I thought it was about losing friends because the band.
Well, you know how
it wasn't
I feel
the band
about
anymore.
The band
Yeah.
now currently.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting because this is way before that happened. Okay, so and yet there is no way of knowing if the opportunity or threat of the band starting up again will ever happen. That was the frustrating points that I was dealing with, I think, when Ben and I finally reached that point of no return. Just I didn't, there was no secure idea that we would be anything ever.
And Jesus, what was it? Like 96?
Well, this is 2006 when we stopped touring. We did the House of Blues shows in 2001 or 2002.
Yes, that's.
And then basically we were only a band in me and Ben doing paperwork and and stuff like that.
What about had T-Punk? Oh yeah, because Teen Punks and Heat came out, and then Blackout started shortly thereafter.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I was still doing some Weasel stuff when even a Blackout was together.
Yeah, I think those two House of Blues shows, right?
Yeah. In hindsight, there was just never any knowing for sure, and even with the band split up, there remains band business that must be attended to. As Rob was just saying, attended to perpetually, collecting royalties divided by precise percentages, writing checks, paying taxes, reading incomprehensible contracts, keeping track of payments due, and figuring out how to work your updated computer programs and accounting software. Yes, all of it. But something about this particular breakup was more unsettling than any other hiatus. The last hiatus seemed more like a hiatus, or a pause, or restructure. You and Franklin started an ill-fated band called the Gorgo Girls. Oh, that's actually the name of the band. Sometimes I do that where I actually
the Gorgo. That was the actual.
Yeah, sometimes I do that. Like Gub's name is actually Gub in here, and the girl that I liked in Texas is actually named Karen, and her name was actually Karen. There's some names that I kept for some reason that they just had sort of a more of a personal connection with me. And the Gorgo Girls for some reason. I think I kept that the same name because it's a ripped off name from something that already existed. So I thought it was funny to actually use the rip off.
Plus, it is such not awkward. It's such an unusual name that it could very easily be perceived as kind of a fake name.
Yeah. And that was a movie. So Gorgo Girls was a movie. Okay, so and Vittles and Muddle formed the Roald Dolls. Oh, that's Sludgeworth. This is during that period when Sludgeworth was going on, and me and Ben were doing Gorgo Girls. Oh, so this is before the My Brain Hurts.
Just.
Yeah, this is that breakup. Okay, yeah, that was a long breakup. Franklin, Muddle, and you were all still in touch, and it seemed inevitable that the band would reform. But something about this second hiatus was sour. Oh, okay, that was the first one. So now we're talking about this newer one. This was always in the back of your mind during this time period, taking up too much space in the closet in your head marked miscellaneous, vaguely disturbing memories. That's funny. Muddle was asked to quit drinking. Yeah, okay, so this is after Anthem for New Tomorrow, between that and Enemies. So I'm talking about the two different breakups here. There was the one that was after Boogada, before we reformed into My Brain Hurts. That was the big one. When we actually became the band that people knew, because that's when Panic joined.
Yeah, I think Anthem was kind of the breakthrough.
Well, no. My Brain Hurts, what I'm saying was.
Oh, okay.
Now, this breakup was after Anthem, when Vapid was kicked out. So.
Wait, what was after Anthem?
Enemies, How to Make Enemies.
Okay. Oh,
that's without Vapid. That's when we brought in Mike
Dirnt, right?
Mike Dirnt, yeah. So maybe you guys know this stuff too. Maybe you didn't. Muddle was asked to quit drinking, but chose to instead quit the band. I actually, when I wrote this book, I showed Vapid some of the stuff to make sure he was okay with this, and he was okay with that. There's another one later in the book that he was okay with, but it's a little bit more nasty. Not about him, about Ben. But anyway, Franklin and Muddle had been living together and had gotten awfully close over the last year, but something was eroding. They didn't work together on songs anymore. Muddle started yet another side project and would show up at rehearsals visibly hungover. Never drunk, but just not all there. Franklin said that his drinking was getting him harmful to himself and others, and Franklin thought that for Muddle's own well-being, he had to be given an ultimatum that may potentially help him in the long run. You didn't really like the plan, but told Franklin that he was closer to Muddle than anybody else and probably knew better. I was going to say something, but this is a quote, probably me talking to myself, so I'll just do this. The band won't be the same without... Oh, no. The band won't be the same without him, you said, apprehensively to Franklin Famous. We started without him. I know that, but still, I think what I said is true. Well, let's fucking hope he just quits drinking. He didn't. He quit the band. Yeah, that's one thing that Ben would always admit that he would say to me, that he thought I was right, that it was wrong to kick 86 Vapid at that point. But I didn't know they were best friends, and what was I going? I mean, if he thought he was saving Vapid's life, I was like, what am I going to say? No, it was a difficult situation. But I did plead that he wouldn't kick him out. Dred's constant mumbling of boring complaints of his childhood. Oh, I feel bad because I really get down on Panic sometimes here, and I've actually apologized to him since I wrote this book. So he's Dred.
Yeah, what's wrong with Panic?
Every
time I've met
Panic was a really good guy, but his thing was that he was going through a lot emotionally that he wouldn't let anybody know, so he would just go on these weird, obscure, absurd rants and these circular conversations where you just kind of would nod out or get
just couldn't
keep up with him. And it was getting a little bit annoying, but Panic has always been one of on tours. Him and I would always get along the best, so that's why I felt bad, because I was trying to really be honest in this book, but in reality, him and I got along a lot better more than in the book.
Punk name was very fitting. Anytime I've talked to him, he's very kind of scattered.
Yeah.
And not in a bad way, but like in a cool, just damn panicky way.
Yeah, exactly. So I call him Dred here. Dred's constant mumbling of boring complaints of his childhood and the increasing amount of lies that began falling from his lips. Yeah, he was having a hard time, because he even took to counseling after that and apologized for things. We had a big apology session like a few years ago.
Like a whole Metallica thing with you guys?
I don't know. It was right before my 50th birthday, and I really wanted him to be there, so it was important to me to sort of make amends for all the people that I hadn't been talking to. I even tried with Ben, but it didn't work. Plus, his obvious need for stardom to fill a gap in his life was pissing off Franklin. Me and Panic still argue about this. I really do think he did come off looking like, wow, he's really trying to like sell himself like in front of Green Day and stuff like that. But it was hard to tell, because he was just kind of panicky already and kind of like easily excitable. But it really used to piss off Ben a lot just to see him. But then again, I think it's just me and Panic we both like to be in the audience. We both had that in similar, like, whereas Vapid and Ben would hide back in the green room, whatever. Me and Panic would always be in the audience. But we would handle it differently. I'd be just kind of quiet, wandering around.
Yeah, you'll usually hang out at the bar.
And he was all just like in
Hey,
everyone's
I'm
face.
Dan
Yeah. So I think it kind of rubbed us a little wrong, even though now it's like whatever, He was just having fun. Franklin said he would refuse to tour or record with Dread ever again. But within a few months, through a series of odd events, the three of them were back in a new band called The Derivatives.
Yep. And I absolutely, as much of a fan of the band as I am, the first album, I believe you calling the band The Derivatives is so brilliantly fucking on point. I love it. I love it.
Well, thank you. It actually almost sounds like Riverdale's did. Like a lot of the same letters are in there. Like you can almost spell Riverdale's out of that.
It's like the one guy whose punk name is from the goddamn Riverdale's isn't in the Riverdale's.
Yeah, I always wonder whether he did that on purpose. But
come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
You would think, he's done so much, and that I've always questioned whether it's in response to me, and it's like, man, I don't know. It's really interesting. But anyway, so that's what happened. And you were left drunk in Memphis wandering. That's why I was having that little sort of drinking spree. I was depressed at how that all fell down, because I was the one that wanted to tour and stay together, and then I ended up the only one not.
Yeah, wasn't
playing.
it that you wanted to tour?
And I say, how in the hell did this all happen?
It's like you wanted to tour still, and they were like, no, but then all of a sudden they're like, hey, we're going on tour with Green Day, basically, right?
It didn't happen exactly that way, but it all spiraled from once Ben kicked out Vapid and realized he kicked out his favorite writing partner, and then he just wanted to take a break and not write Weasel songs anymore. So it wasn't about touring specifically then. But they did go on major tours with Green Day, and I never got to do any of that. I never saw a crowd over like 100 or 200 people until we did those House of Blues shows.
Which blows my mind.
Yeah. You and Charlotte stumbled down this very same road and looked up at these exact southern skyscrapers. The buildings rocked back and forth, touching one another, tossing inebriated voyeurs from one room to another. Keys jiggled out of keyholes and slid through windows, falling into the pockets of the crocked pedestrians below. Your drunken brain remembers it well. It recollects the blueprint of reconstructed details, the blurry reminiscence of which hotel was the right one. You related the whole story to the bass player from the Boys from Wyoming. I love that every time I say one of their names, I have to do that whole... like, their name instead of saying Corey, because it's all...
The Boys.
Yeah. But their names are bass player from the Boys from Wyoming, the guitar player from the Boys, the singer... the drummer. So I like that every time I have to say one of the names.
That you keep
it
that
takes up a whole sentence.
Yeah.
I think it's funny. But the bass player from the Boys from Wyoming, but avoided talking about any of the connections to the Derivatives. He likes the Derivatives. He doesn't. Corey hates Ben. No, we were talking about him at Cody's wedding. He just they still respect the hell out of all of his music, but those three just do not have any respect for him.
There's no
yeah. But they are not one of his favorites, the Derivatives. It was hard to discuss that band, and you found it easier just to leave it out of stories. That's true. I still have never heard a Riverdale's record. The correct hotel was not the Pheasant Inn, with the big chicken glowing like a beacon perched on the roof, but that distinctive tourist trap did indeed help to distinguish the unexceptional hotel next door. This is where you and Charlotte had placed your backpacks 10 or 12 hours earlier, close together, taking up space on one of the two beds, the double on the umpteenth floor. You both left that room 9 or 11 hours earlier and wandered separately, estranged from one another's thoughts, buried deep in solitary, exhilarating moments and in insecurities about whether sex was in the future. That's the one. That's the place we're looking for. You point at the long-awaited-for destination. There it is, slightly to the right of the indistinct hotel. You see a glowing advertisement in the distance. It is a picture of BC Pills. That's Green Day. Yeah. So that name derived from Green Day, which actually their Green Day, I'm pretty sure is a reference to 420 pot.
Yeah.
But Green Day is also what the people refer to as the sugar pills for birth control. Yeah.
I don't take birth control.
Yeah. So, but that's what BC. That's why I named them BC pills.
No,
birth control pills.
I just love getting a kick out of hearing these stories about young John, because when we met, I think you were not that much older than me, but you were very much more of a.
What was it? 2001? Is that when we started?
2000, yeah. So
2000.
So it was 1920.
Yeah, so I was, what was that? That would make me 33?
Yes.
Yeah.
So to me, you've always been this, like, kind of father-mentor figure that I've strived and looked up to. So to hear you wandering around, throwing up in your mouth drunk is just such a treat.
Yeah, well, it wasn't a large part of my life, but it did happen.
But it happened.
Yeah. I had to be honest with everything in this book. That was the idea. Okay, this part you left out when relaying the story to the bass player from the Boys, Wyoming. BC Pills had recently signed to a major label, and now they were on their way to becoming one of the most famous punk bands in the world. This did not disturb you. They deserved it. They worked hard. They were now in Europe. You know this not because you follow their career, but because the Derivatives are touring with them. BC Pills was helping out the new band by inviting them to play a whole slew of shows with them in Europe at stadiums full of thousands of fans. This causes confusion in your brain. Could that have been semi-famous touring? That would have been your first time in Europe. That would have been nice. Would Franklin and you have allowed semi-famous to open for BC Pills on a major label-funded tour? It is hard to say. Is Franklin freed of his own restrictions when you are not around? You are the one who loves touring. Maybe you should be on the tour with those guys. Your finger shifts over to the sign of BC Pills and quickly shifts back to the hotel sign. Yeah, so that's a lot of stuff I was going through. But I really do think if it was me and Ben making that decision, we might not have gone on Green Day anyway. Because, like I said, I think in many ways, and why eventually it decayed for us, is I think I was a mirror for Ben for like the things that he had, like keeping his integrity in check, you know, like.
Yeah, but to me, there's always integrity, and there's always wanting to have your music heard by a larger audience. Punk rock ethos be damned, you know.
Yeah, but I mean, we took that pretty extreme. Like, we never did anything that we weren't involved with ourselves. We were never on a label that we weren't intricately involved in. You know, we did all the accounting, we did all the lawyer work. Riverdale's was different. But what he was trying to get two worlds at once, you know, because he wanted that. I think my feeling is that without me in the band, they were like, he was like, oh, I'm free of all my integrity that I
feel
have.
with like the Derivatives, Ben was having his cake and eating it too.
Well, yeah, trying to, but then it imploded because he was still trying to get away with running everything and made everyone miserable. And that's why we reformed and did Bark Like a Dog, because they couldn't stand each other anymore, but still wanted to do a band. Charlotte accelerates. Oh, let's see how far are we getting. Okay, we gotta move a little bit.
Okay.
Charlotte accelerates her stumbled pace in the direction of your finger. The bass player from the Boys, Wyoming, veers his glance slightly to the right, up a few floors. So I'm mixing the two time periods in the same place at the same time, which I like doing. This would be fun to be a movie, I think. Mr. Famous grabs the steering wheel with. Oh, so there's three of them. Look at this. Charlotte accelerates her stumbled pace in the direction of your finger, period. The bass player from the Boys from Wyoming veers his glance slightly to the right, up a few floors, period. Mr. Famous grabs the steering wheel with both hands and pulls to the side of the road, period. The Derivatives get off a plane in France, period. Everyone says, good, I can't fucking see straight anymore. That's like 6 different universes going on at once. You and Charlotte make it to the elevator. Probably I'm allowing myself to do that because I'm talking about being drunk, and you know your memory sort of just goes from places to places. So it made sense to have all those overlapping, similar memories. You and Charlotte make it to the elevator, prop yourselves up, press the 7th floor button on the right column, and the brass reflection of the panel of numbered buttons. For a second, you thought you could glimpse a little green man riding on a bicycle. Oh, you know what? I talked about this earlier, but you know, it's so hard to write a book like this and keep track of all the chapters. And my favorite chapter, I left out on accident. Me and my editor completely left it out, and this was a reference to that. So, and I think I talked about it on this program thing. But there was a part where me and Ben were driving through Texas, and we were driving for like 2 days straight, and I looked, and I was driving, and I looked to the side of the road and said, "Ben, do you see the little green man on a bicycle on the side of the road?" And he's like, "No, I think you're done driving." And then he got in the seat, and then not like a half hour later, he's like, "John, we need to pull over. I can see the little green man on the bicycle." So that's making a reference to that, but it never made it in to the book. So you turn around and see Charla. You plunge into her face. She opens her mouth. You kiss and crash and sweat, topple to the ground, pass out. This is all in the elevator. The doors open. Her leg falls from the elevator into the hallway. We did do that too. We actually just passed out in the elevator. Your eyes open after hearing a clunking sound for the Your eyes open after hearing a clunking sound for the 5th or 12th time. The doors are pushing and repelling against her foot. Now that didn't happen, but it's dramatic. A figure in the hallway steps into view. How long have you been passed out in here? The figure is not outside in the hall. It is not a stranger standing beside your slumped, wrinkled body in the elevator. It is my reflection cast from nowhere at all onto the elevator's metallic doors. The reflection... Oh, the metallic doors. See, that's to me as a reference back to Boston, which I talk about the metallic doors at the Gothic Club. I do a lot of that, like making parallels between places.
We were... I remember being in Boston with us, and we had a lot of fun in Boston. Is Boston just a place that you gravitate towards?
Yeah, I would never live there, but I always have a good time when I'm there. And Bice lives there. So, the reflection splits in half, appears and disappears as the doors open and shut on Charlotte's drunken, high-heeled, encased foot. Does that hurt her leg? Leave me alone. You raise your hand toward my reflection and wave it as if you were saying something extremely important. Just let me be stupid. I want to experience this mistake. I loved her, goddammit. I just let me relive this wonderfulness of the meaningless, pathetic, life-grasping dizziness. Leave me the fuck alone. So I'm talking to myself. The I and the me in the book. I will not describe how pitiful you look. I do not want to embarrass you in front of the unconscious Charla. I would just say, fine, you're acting too maudlin for me anyhow. Small clumps of bulky innards bubbling in a putrefied, matte black fluid spill from the pores of my reflection. Ooh. The fluid seeps into the hall's carpeting. The carpeting dries instantly without a spot of black or bulk. Having nothing inside to justify its shape, the soiled outline of my reflection implodes. It vanishes from sight. That's also a reference to another earlier chapter where everything sort of falls into a puddle of black oil. So that's sort of giving this... how this figure appears sometimes.
I have a question. Do you, when you, because I noticed you go, there is a set, well, there's not really a set time, but do you purposely write in the voice of a younger John and then write in the voice of an older John throughout the book for different memories?
Yeah, well... There's basically 3 things going on. There's the story in the present tense, which is me from the beginning of the band up to me being in Boston. So, and since everything is in the present tense in Boston, so that's me then reflecting on all that. But the book, as you find out in the last chapter, was written after the House of Blues show, which was years later, and that. I am on stage doing this spinning because me and Ben decided without telling anybody that we were going to break up the band, and this was going to be our last show again, Yes, so I did this thing where I destroyed my guitar on stage. So basically, in the idea of the book is that while that was happening to me in the House of Blues, I left my body and went and visited myself in the past. So that's the I is talking to the you, which is me in the past, who is reflecting on things in the past. So it's fun because I like to play with then how things felt when they were happening, how they happen in memory, and how they happen in judgment.
In judgment, because when you can actually reflect on.
Yeah, so the one in the most present tense, which is me on the stage in the House of Blues, is the most judgmental of myself. Like, so when I was writing this, whenever I felt like I wasn't being truthful to myself, I would have my.
When did you write this?
Myself show up. This was written. Actually, it was started when I went to go start forming the band. I went to Italy and I started writing it in 2001. Or 2000.
Because I vaguely remember this coming out right about the time we started playing.
Yeah, it would have had to. Yeah, 2005. So we were.
Wait, no, not 2005.
We had already been playing. I think we started in 2002, right?
No, 2001.
Yeah, so you were already out of the band by when this came out. I think then you disappeared for a while, right?
Just I was MIA for because I thought this came out when I was still in the band.
2005. Well, Liz says the band's been together. She's known me almost 18 years now, so we started like in 2000. So
2000, yeah.
Yeah, right. So 2005, you weren't in the band.
No.
Then. So you were not around when this came out. I mean, you were around somewhere.
Yeah. I was around somewhere. No, or maybe you were just having ideas for it or shooting it at us.
Well, I was working on it all I worked on it for 7 years, so I was definitely I might have read you stuff.
Yeah, maybe that's just my
Yeah,
memory
that's probably it.
working against
me.
me.
Yeah. Let's get through this one.
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. No, hopefully it's at least interesting enough. You pick up your new girlfriend by the arms, turn her around, and drag her away from the elevator doors. You lift her up off the ground and tote her down the hall. Slowly she slips from your arms to your fingers to vicariously balance on the top of your knee. She drops to the carpeted cement directly in front of the hotel room. That really happened too. She mumbles incoherently and responds back with a mouthful of jumbled words that are more coherent than her words, but just as meaningless. You bend down and kiss her on the forehead. A key slips out of your vest pocket and lands on her ear. You lose your balance and fall backward against the door. The key tumbles off her ear, bounces against her nose, and lands by your foot. It is the mechanism needed to free you from the numbered barrier that you are currently leaning against. It opens the door to the double with the backpacks, the beds, the lamps, and the matching stands, outlets, and cable television. It opens the door into the room with a bird's-eye view of a red brick wall, the abandoned building next to the weed-infested parking lot littered with beer bottle boulders only blocks away from Beale Street. Oh, that's alliteration. Bud beer bottle boulders only blocks away from Beale Street. Where the sky is clear with stars, years thick. Oh, I like using that years thick. That's interesting. The building begins to sway. You grab for the key before it slides across the carpeting and leaps out the window at the end of the hall. Let's skip past the moments you spend struggling to get the key fit into the keyhole. As the door opens, Charlotte swiftly sails past using the last bit of zing she kept buried in her chest. She did. She just sort of, all of a sudden, just bounded off the ground, like, right into the room. It's pretty funny. She drops face first across the bed. You step through the threshold and stand swaying, staring a few moments at the fully clothed girl lying across the covers. You're expecting one out of a handful of possible smallest events to occur, and one does. Her arm lifts into the air as if pulled up by puppet strings. The rest of her body remains motionless. Her face presses out the sight into the mattress. Her wrist twists. Her palm blossoms from a torpid clench. Her fingers extend. She motions you toward her. You pace your sways carefully and cast yourself toward the floating hand. Her arm falls to the bed, cut from its strings. Your body collapses and descends downward beside her. Your eyes, forehead, and hair dangle over the side of the bed. Your feet are in Charlotte's face. This is how you both wake the next morning, just in time to catch the bus back to Chicago. Look, we're almost in the end here now. This is a long one, folks. That's what happens when I have guests. The bass player from the Boys from Wyoming opens the door. Now we're back in Boston. The drummer and guitarist of the Boys from Wyoming are passed out on the cushy carpeting on the floor of the hotel room. They didn't know which of the two beds you would have wanted, so they both decided to sleep on the floor to avoid having to move later. So that was Tim and Cody. Tim was in the band then. I was talking to Tim the other day about there was a time where he wasn't in the band and for a while, and I kind of avoided talking about the drummer much in this book because I didn't want to confuse Tim with the other guy, so I just decided to not focus on that as much. And that's one of the reasons this new article coming out is mostly about Tim, because I felt bad that he kind of wasn't in the book as much. They weren't aware of the polite to give in your difference to where you sleep at. You shake your head. This was the very reason you got a hotel room, so that they wouldn't have to sleep on the floor. You planned on sleeping in the chair. You have spent plenty of nights sleeping on comfy hotel chairs. They're actually quite comfortable once you get used to sleeping on a diagonal. The boys from Wyoming never stay in a nice hotel on tour. They claim to be connoisseurs of the Motel 6. And they even carried around an updated catalog of U.S. locations, but you doubt they actually were able to afford staying at them very often. Once you found out the band was going to play in Memphis, you called ahead and got a reservation at the Hilton. One night of luxury on a tour made out of shit. That's true. Actually, Tim spent most of the whole evening in the pool on the roof. They had a rooftop pool. Early in the evening, the whole band went for a swim in the pool. There it is. Swim in the pool on the roof. And then you and the bass player from the Boys from Wyoming decided to go out for a drink. Isn't it interesting how I decide to tell what's happening after I already talk about it happening? If you notice, I'm talking about
you kind of double back.
Yeah, I double back on there. You try to recap the adventures of the night, but all you can think about is how fast your head is spinning. There's no way you can get to sleep in this condition. Your body's on the edge of sickness, and you don't want to lie down on the bed and end up vomiting on everybody. The bass player crawls on top of one of the beds, takes off one shoe, and then falls asleep, still dressed in all his clothes, which is also parallel to Shannon in the other part. Through his sock, his toes curl up and extend, back and forth, just like a baby's toes. He begins snoring. You walk into the bathroom and look at yourself in the mirror. Oh, I know what's coming. I used to do this when I would get drunk. For some reason, you think that if you focus on a reflection, you can stop yourself from feeling dizzy. It does not work.
No, it doesn't.
You're just watching your white, blood-drained face getting paler. Perhaps if you throw up, you will feel better, and then tomorrow you won't have a hangover. Get it all over with now while everyone is sleeping. You stand in the center of the bathroom and start spinning around to make yourself sick. You spin faster and faster, using the wall to push yourself quicker. Your elbow bumps into the sink and your spinning stops with a thud. You look at yourself in the mirror again. I am so ridiculous. You begin spinning again, faster and faster. Now you can feel the pressure in your head building and the muscles in your throat and stomach contracting. I'm going to say here, before I do this last paragraph, that this is also a parallel to what I was just telling you about, that in the end, it's me. I'm spinning on stage, because I actually did that when I was playing at the end of that set before when I broke my guitar. I was spinning.
Broke your
and I actually sprained my ankle from spinning so much. So this is another parallel to that idea. And this actually happened. I did spin around in the bathroom to make myself sick. Okay, here we go. You pull the lid off from the toilet and release the entire liquefied night into the toilet, vomiting out all the memories of the piano bar, Semi-Famous, Charla. Your life so far spews from your mouth. When you are done, you wipe up the area responsible even when sick. Wash your face, and once again look at yourself in the mirror. You smile. It's not a charmed life, but it's a good one. You are a ridiculous man. But that thought is enjoyable and kind of funny. You turn off the light, sprawl out on the bed, and fall asleep with no thoughts left to keep you awake. End of chapter 11, take 2.
I have two things.
Two things to say? Yeah.
I have one. I find it completely hilarious to hear stories about you being drunk when you were younger. Because I just remember us being on tour and you being like, Jim, get it together. And two, was there at any point that you were considering actually being or joining the Lillingtons at all?
Well, that I mean, that I didn't write about that in the book, but they wanted me to. I actually asked them if I didn't want to be in the band because I wanted it to be their band, and it seemed weird to be their label
But
guy.
it kind of seems like you're
Yeah.
such a part of their history.
Yeah, well, I asked if I could play on their next record, which turned out to be Back Channel Broadcast, and they wanted me to play second guitar on that, but Ben wouldn't let it happen. He said he wouldn't record the record if I was on there. It wasn't such a big deal to me because I just wanted to help them out. It wasn't.
Yeah, but
I didn't think they needed another guitarist
But it
at
seems
that
like
time.
you have such a cool and neat history and a friendship with those guys who are great guys and would have been such a rad fit. You know.
Yeah, but it was fine. I mean, I did with the Mangies too. You know, I played with them.
That's true.
I just like playing live, so that was all it was about. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. This is Close Up John. Just saying, if you can, please donate to my Patreon to continue the work for Jughead's Basement and for the reading of Weasels in a Box. You can also just give a one-time donation. Just do it at jugheadsbasement@gmail.com at PayPal, and that goes straight to me. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this. This song at the beginning and the end by my band Even in Blackouts was written and also sung by Jim, who is my special guest today. Thank you. Goodbye.